Today we want to introduce you to one of our new traversing panel workbooks. When you purchase the traversing panel workbook on our website, you no longer just get one workbook, you get two. The first one is this Up the Bolt Traversing for Up the Bolt Fabrics, and the second is the Railroaded Fabrics workbook. This first page is your notes page. We have highlighted here that labor is calculated based on 54-inch wide fabric, and yardage is calculated based on the fabric width you enter. So in other words, you can use fabrics that are much wider than normal, and your labor is still going to be figured according to a 54-inch wide piece. So for your face fabric, you can enter in, and I've done this ahead of time, your client, the designer, the room, finished width, finished length, number of windows. The overlap and return can be filled in. It does not factor into the calculations, and your fullness. This is really important here. You input all of your fabric information, the width and the vertical repeat. You have to have those entered. If you don't, the calculations in this area will not work. So this fabric is 54 inches wide with a 10-inch repeat and a 10-inch horizontal repeat. I've put the wholesale price here. If you are selling the fabric, you can fill this out. If you're not selling the fabric, you can leave that blank. As you change the fabric width, let's say that this fabric is actually 118 inches, and you notice right now we've got 12 widths of material and 12 widths of labor figured. That's because that was at 54. The minute I change this to 118, it reduces the number of widths because your width is now based on 118 inches, but your labor cost is still based on the 54 inches. So that's one of the biggest changes. Lets you use wider widths of fabric to calculate the yardage, but yet keeping your labor cost at the 54-inch width piece. So it tells you need 40 yards. This 40 yards is then carried here to your price, and it gives you the cost of the fabric. These items at the bottom, center draw, buckram size, these are all for your notes. They are really good to go ahead and fill in at the time that you're doing the estimating, because it certainly makes it easier to go back later and do some checking on that. Nothing on this one is carried over except for you can see the designer, the client, the room. You can put the date in, but you can add your lining type and the color, your finished length, the hems and headers amount you need, and again, you can change your lining width. It is at 54. If we say it's 113, that takes you down, moves your yardage down to 16 and your widths to 5. So you can change that back and forth and immediately see the differences. If you had a flannel, and I had not finished filling this in, so I can go ahead and do that. As soon as you start hitting enter, it will easily go in and start figuring the calculations for you. A really good tip that Rosemary discovered when using this is she will save, she'll go in and save this particular Up the Bolt or the railroading workbook, and she'll just go ahead and fill this in, especially the pricing, leave the finished length, but if she knows she's going to be doing sateen, she'll go ahead and put in the pricing and maybe the width that she normally uses so that she doesn't have to go back and add that every single time. This is your trim, your purchase trim page. Again, information up here just for reference. And then it asks you the top edge finished width. So wherever you're going to place it, this is only placed on the leading edge. I've given 10 inches of excess, 2 panels with trim. Actually, I should put 4 since we had 2 windows and I said they were center draw, so that changes that. And then the cost per yard to apply the trim, and if you're going to sell the trim, the pricing goes here. Same with fabric banding. This is a little bit more detailed simply because you do have to figure up your banding by inches here vertical and horizontal if you're going to do that, to figure out the cost to apply, depending on how many vertical and horizontals you're using. But again, this will figure out the number of strips of material that you need and the width, and also your yardage and labor and pricing. You can add in your hardware by listing the item number, size, style, finish, quantity, price, and your shipping here if there's going to be shipping. If you have miscellaneous purchased items such as pelliforms or batons or something else that's not included in your drapery hardware order form, you can put those items here and it will add those to the quote. And then your quote page is closer in on these than it was on the previous workbook, simply because you're not, the next few tabs, the panel's work order, the installation information, and the change order form, these three do not affect the quote. So everything that you've added in from these previous tabs is now all collected here. You can go in and add an embellishment labor if you're going to put buttons on the panels. It has pulled in the materials charge, which is your linings. It's pulled in your fabric charges if you're selling fabric, trim charges if you're selling trim, your hardware charges. You can add in your installation, and you can also add in any of these other items. If you did a measuring fee and if you have a delivery fee, those are all put in here. If you need to figure your materials tax, you can go ahead and put your tax in. And so that materials tax now has gone over here, and it shows you that on that the fabric and the trim and the hardware, anything that are materials would have a tax on it. If you do labor, your labor is now going to have a tax on it. And if you have an install tax, it adds that into the installation area. So you can leave out as much as you need to leave out of these, but it's also, you can add everything in. And so here it is broken down. There's your total labor, total material, total fabric, trim, banding, hardware, other fees, which is this area, installation, and then the total quote. So you have everything you need on this one quote page. The panel's work order is a page that if you want to print it out, you can drop your pictures, a fabric picture here. You can again go in and fill out these gray areas. And this is something that you can send to a workroom or use if you are a workroom yourself. You can use it in order to fabricate the panels. If you like to send information with your installers, if you're not going to be at the install, this is a really good form to stick in with what's finished. The change order form is also, if you have things to be altered, it's a good place to record those. So what I normally do when I use these is, the first thing I do is when you come in, we tell you you download it to your device. I would save it under this name, and that's your original. If you want to use one that a working copy and put the original aside, you just come up and you go File and Save As, and I give it a new name. And what I do is I also give it a new name, and I put it underneath my clients and put their name on it. So I have a workbook for each person, each name, each designer, each client that I have quoted for. And I save that in their folder so that I can go back, and if I need to make changes, as they say, oh, we changed this fabric, or we changed the finished length. Once you do that, it immediately changes your yardage, your labor, and everything else. You do have to go back in and change your finished length here. And you would need to go back in and change your finished length on your leading edges. But for yardage and on the face fabric, once you start on each page, once you start pumping that information in, it immediately starts calculating. If you have any questions concerning the Up the Bolt Traversing Panels workbook, you are more than welcome to reach out to us at seamlessworkroom.com and send us an email at seamlessworkroom@gmail.com.